I remember someone who was so disappointed that she wasn't able to have a vaginal birth. And I said, you know what? You've done everything. I
Mm,
can't even think of another thing that you could have done
right.
different. And just to help her to understand that sometimes we don't get the outcome that we want,
Mhm.
but it isn't for lack of trying. It wasn't
Right.
in her case.
Mhm.
It's probably the way her pelvis is made. Her
Mhm.
babies could just never come down.
Mhm.
And we don't have any control over that. You control the things that you can. You eat well, you know, you try and relax, you try and remember that you're growing a baby. It takes a lot of energy and you need to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
But you we don't penalize women because you don't have the right pelvis or something. Like,
Hi everyone, my name is Soul Tali, and you're listening to Soul Sisterhood Birthing Journey podcast, where mothers share our unique birthing stories to create unity within womanhood. And today, I'm with Lisa Frame, who gave birth to two beautiful children. You've been a midwife for last 33 years and a registered nurse for 8 years prior to becoming a midwife. How are you doing today, Lisa?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here, Soul. I
Uh-huh.
appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
I'm curious and excited for this episode because, as I said earlier, you not just gave, birth to two beautiful children, but you was actually midwife, right? When you was giving birth. Yeah.
I
So,
was.
yeah. And you are still. So
Yeah.
I'm really like intrigued to listen to your birthing story, and I'm sure we're going to talk about how you've been serving women as a midwife as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And can you tell me a little bit about yourself, and then from there, do you want to go ahead and start your story?
Sure. So I've been a midwife since 1990. I've worked in freestanding birth centers. I've worked in hospital environment, in doctor's offices, in midwifery practices. I've also done some home birth. And so I've seen all areas of helping women in all areas of birthing. Um, the story is the same. Women just want to have peace and quiet when they're birthing and be allowed the opportunity to birth the way that they would like to.
Mhm.
Um, my my love for women and helping them birth really bore out of the fact that I was a labor and delivery nurse in a very tiny country hospital in Northeast Pennsylvania when I was younger. And I accidentally, because the family practice doc couldn't get there in time, accidentally caught a baby. And I loved the rush of just that whole birth experience and what that was like, as scared as I was at the time. Um, and it started kind of there and grew out of that. I ended up becoming a midwife prior to having my own family. And you'd think with all that knowledge base that, things would go so smoothly and everything. But being a first time pregnant person, pregnant and giving birth was just as scary to me as it was to my former clients. And the patients that I worked with. So, even though it's something I knew a lot about intellectually, the experience is very different when it's you. So,
Right.
I definitely grew a lot from my birth experiences, and they only made me stronger with being able to support women for labor and for what they want for their birthing experiences.
Mhm. So that remind me of your story, your birthing story, and a little
Uh-huh.
bit of summary that you sent me over. You said that you started your summary as it was a very empowering experience, and then as I
It
was
was.
reading your summary, I can feel that empowerment. And I'm not gonna give out too much, but can you go ahead and give us some of your own birthing stories?
Well, it's, being a midwife, I worked up until I was going to have a baby, essentially. I caught a baby like 2 days before I actually had to be induced because of a medical complication. And I just remember feeling like, oh my God, like I'm so big. It's so hard to just move. And here I am helping this woman birth. And it was just her birth just went so smoothly. And I was like, oh, thank you, Lord. Like, like this is all going great. And then 2 days later, I've got decreased fetal movement. So my baby wasn't moving well. And one of the docs, my friend scanned me and I had really low fluid. And I'm like, yeah, I've been working too hard. I wasn't taking care of myself. It's just how it is in healthcare. We don't always think of ourselves. We wait to go to the bathroom, our bladders are like screaming at us. It definitely helped me to realize that I need to take better care of myself. But as it turned out, I did end up needing to be induced, and I knew that that was going to happen. So of course I did the midwife thing and I took castor oil, which was really fun because then I was just up the whole night going to the bathroom, which it didn't do anything because I wasn't even due yet. I was only 38 weeks. So if you
But
know
you had
anything
to
about
get
castor
induced
oil,
because your fluid was low. That's what I'm
yes,
saying. Yeah.
exactly. So that's dangerous for the baby because there's no cushion for the cord. And I knew that. So, of course, I wasn't sleeping well that night, just waiting to be induced. And then I went in, in the morning, got through. It only took about 24 hours, which really isn't bad for a first baby being induced from like zero, your
38
cervix
weeks. Yeah.
dilated.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I had everything. I think I had all kinds of gel. I had, I think I tried pain medication at least 3 or 4 times before I was far enough that I could actually have an epidural. And I'll admit, I'll be the first one to admit I have no pain tolerance. So I knew that was probably going to happen. My poor husband, God love him, he's just trying to be supportive. I'm like, what? You're not helping me do anything, like he could do nothing right, in my mind. But as things went along, once I got the epidural, it helped me to relax enough that I went from like 3 to fully in a couple of hours. So that's
Wow.
really fast for the first baby too. And then I proceeded to have to push for 3 hours. That was before we did laboring down.
Mhm.
So I pushed for 3 hours and then I basically stood up in the bed and said to my friend, pull the baby out, I'm done.
Mhm.
And she said, I can only do that if I bring the resident in, which nobody wants a nurse that works with a resident does not want them there at your birth. Okay. But I said, I don't care. Pull the baby out. I'm done. And so she did. And it was a very easy vacuum. It was just that I was so exhausted. I just couldn't, in my mind, I couldn't do it anymore. So the other thing that I asked for at the end of the birth was to turn the epidural off because I really wanted to feel the baby coming out. I wanted to have that sensation. I helped so many people with that. Being able to birth, out of hospital the years that I did before having my daughter, I wanted to know that sensation, and I was really grateful that I was able to feel and helping with the baby come out. So the the thing that I learned, one of the things that I really learned, my doc, who's my friend, was so supportive. She did whatever I wanted. She really was great. And she took care of me for my second baby too, who was a pound and a half bigger. So of course I pushed another 3 hours. But she said to me, I am not pulling this baby out because I know it's big. I'm like, she said, I am not getting a shoulder on a midwife. And I said, all right.
Like a baby shoulder stocking.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I said, okay, fine,
Huh?
I'll get her out. So I did. But I had a friend with me who was a nurse who had worked with me for years in the birth center. And she was so, excuse me, so comforting because God loved my husband. I gave him the job of watching the 6-year-old who was also at the birth. And I'm really glad I did because he was so good at that.
Mhm.
And I
Oh.
knew learned his limitations, I learned my limitations.
Mhm.
And I thought, okay, I'm the one who has to get this baby out. I'm going to have somebody duel him with me, somebody help me and just tell me I'm doing a good job.
Mhm.
And Linda was my person and still in touch with her. And she did such a fantastic job just keeping me focused. And yes, you're making progress and everything's fine.
Mhm.
And so I did birth with my other child who was a pound and a half bigger, was a shoulder dystocia, and
Mhm.
had a broken clavicle that we didn't discover till she was 2 days old.
Oh,
She was
wow.
fine,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
So
but just a bigger kid.
I'm assuming though even it was shoulder dystocia, which means baby's head came out and stuck at
Hmm.
the shoulder, but it was your second baby.
Hmm.
It helped. Usually your pelvis kind of was a little more flexible than it would be the first baby.
Yes.
Yeah. But at the same time, you're very short.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm only 4'10". Yeah.
4'10". Yeah, yeah. So that puts you on a risk of having shoulder
Hmm.
dystocia because your body is so small. Yeah.
Yep.
So it doesn't happen to everybody, but you're so small, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
But I
Um,
was determined to get that baby out
uh-huh.
myself.
Yeah. So how big was actually weight? How big was your
My first baby was 6 pounds, and my
uh-huh.
second one was 7, 9.5.
Wow, okay, 7 pounds and 9.5 pounds. Yeah.
Mhm.
So she's not that big. It's just she's
No,
big for your body.
big for me. Yes,
Yes, yeah.
correct.
So that's how every delivery is different and unique because
Yes.
we are all different as an individual, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you
So
know? I've had a 12-pound baby slide out for a mama, and a 9-pound baby get stuck with the shoulders. So
yes, yeah,
it's really not, it's about the abdomen being so much bigger than the head, more
uh-huh.
so than the actual weight of the baby.
Right, exactly. And then how mom's pelvis shaped, you
Yes.
know, with the baby too, there's
Yes.
so much more than just, oh, I'm scared if baby's gonna stop, and I think there's a lot of contribution of mothers, like mental status and emotional status as well.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's some shoulder dystocia that I have witnessed. It could have been prevented, but the mother was holding so much fear.
Yes.
Yeah, and it just didn't go. When they got there, they just start freaking, So yeah, for me, I see that you're because I know you, in person, and you're very small, person and small body. And then other experiences are like, it could have been preventable if mom was more prepared for the birth. We know that there's a pain, so we understand, like you said earlier, scared, but
Mhm.
not suffering from that
Right.
fear and pain,
That's right.
fear of a pain. Yeah, that's I'm sure because you're midwife, and in the midwifery story, you guys talking about this a lot. And I was teaching birthing class, so when I was taking a birthing educator, we're talking about that. Like, yes, we all know that there's a great pain giving birth, but the pain shouldn't take us to suffering.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I learned as a nurse taking care of ladies in labor was it is the only time in your life when you have pain and you get something awesome out of it. And so
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's something with purpose.
Mhm.
I mean, there are other times in our lives where we suffer, and if you speak spiritually, you can have the opportunity to grow emotionally from those things and spiritually, but is the only time in our lives on earth where we actually physically get something wonderful
Mhm.
out of our pain.
Right, right. To me, that is a very profound metaphor for life.
Hmm.
That I feel like yeah, I'm a very spiritual person, but if you really take that birthing experience into your life, even like mental or emotional or even physical pain, in the end, there's always something that lesson to learn, like you said.
Absolutely.
That's after I be being a labor nurse for a long time. That's like almost like a very organically I flow into that kind of spiritual states. Like when I see mothers giving, birth, going through so much pain, and then in the end, there's always this great the outcome. Even though, like you said earlier, less like desirable outcome, you face it,
Mhm.
and if you really open to it, I feel like there's a great lesson always.
Absolutely. One of the things that I'm really conscious about is like when I do the pelvic exam at their first visit, I always tell them, "Oh my gosh, you have such a great pelvis for birthing."
Yeah.
And I joke and say that's probably something only a midwife would tell you, but I think it's important, especially when ladies come to me and they say, "I had a C-section for CPD. I was told I have this really tiny pelvis." And I do their exam and I'm like, "No, I feel lots of room in here.
Mhm.
Let's see what you do in labor," and then they come back they got a cesarean for maybe a 7-pound baby, and they have a 10-pound baby vaginally. And I would see this happen at the birth center over
Mhm.
and over.
Mhm.
And I was like, are we not like listening to people? Are we And what it felt like to me was that, okay, she got a C-section of 4 centimeters. And this was back in the 90s. I don't see this so much now, but it was almost like, okay, it's 5 o'clock on Friday. We're done. Like, we need to move this along. And
Mhm.
I got a lot of those ladies for their second births, and I'd be like, this is crazy. I mean, and
Mhm.
80% of the time they still deliver vaginally. I remember someone who was so disappointed that she wasn't able to have a vaginal birth. And I said, you know what? You've done everything. I
Mhm.
can't even think of another thing that you could have done
Right.
different. And just to help her to understand that sometimes we don't get the outcome that we want,
Mhm.
but it isn't for lack of trying. It wasn't
Right.
in her case.
Mhm.
It's probably the way her pelvis is made. Her babies
Mhm.
could just never come down.
Mhm.
And we don't have any control over that.
Mhm.
You control the things that you can. You eat well,
Yeah.
you know, you try and relax. You try and remember that you're growing a baby. It takes a lot of energy and you need to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
But we don't penalize women because you don't have the right pelvis or something. Like,
Mhm.
we do our best with what we have and we move
Right.
on from there. And I think that's with any growth experience.
Mhm.
I hope today, 20 years later or whatever, that she realizes that she did her best. And
Right.
she really did. I never saw somebody so dedicated trying to have a vaginal birth.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so important. That is such an important, point that you just brought in. I think that's where modern medicine comes. Woman's been giving birth for thousands of years,
Yes.
and there was a case it was detrimental to woman and or baby.
Right.
Nowadays in modern medicine, the mothers try everything like you said, but then it just something still happen, and that's where modern medicine comes in, and we can still do the healthy delivery via C-section or like assisted, delivery like vacuum or, forceps.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
And I think I try to help mamas understand that and families understand that there are no bad things that we're doing to them with medicine. What we're trying to do is give them tools to
mhm,
be able to have a safe labor and birth.
mhm,
At least that's my perspective. Whatever we're utilizing to try and help them give birth are
mhm,
tools, and they should be able to help choose the tools that they need to deliver,
right.
to birth.
Yeah, and then that takes I really encourage mothers to take a birthing class to get
Yes.
educated so to make a choice, right? What really concerns me is that what you just earlier you said about like in the 90s, you seen like, moms who had C-section because it's a Friday, 5 o'clock. Okay, we need to move on, I've been to a lot of facility to work, and there's some facilities very supportive to mom and giving them choice and have
Mhm.
them to try everything they can, but there's some facilities, as I'm a travel nurse, so I see a lot of different facilities, and some
Yep.
facilities, oh, still, oh, it's 5 o'clock, okay, let's wrap up, get it done. And
Yeah.
or others also, oh, I don't want to do this, I'm getting tired of being pregnant, can you just have a C-section? I don't want to go
Right.
through pain, that's concerning because, like you said, yeah, I want mothers to have a choice, but then is it really your educated choice? So
Yeah.
when I was listening to your birthing story, to me, it is very powerful because you knew all your choices
Hmm.
and you were the one who was making choice,
Right.
right? So it's not about, to me, in this 2024, it's not just having like natural birth.
Yeah.
It's about having choice. And like you said, our population is getting more, sicker, women's population, and a lot of obesity, a lot of sickness, fundamentally before they even become pregnant. So it is like, modern and medicine and our traditional way of giving birth come together, and what
Mhm.
is really truly best for the mother, they can have every choice that I want them to know, and then there's always modern medicine here for you if you need it.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the mamas that I care for now do not use epidural. They come in, they birth, they labor, they birth, and they go pretty quickly. And I think a lot of it is because in their culture, they trust birth. They
Mm-hmm.
know that they can do this. And I do spend time during the pregnancy telling them things like that too, especially young girls. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
your body's made to do this. It's been doing this for thousands of years. Just know that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
See yourself birthing, like using a little visualization, answering their questions.
Mhm.
A lot of my ladies do not go to classes. We try to get them to come to classes, but a lot of them prefer to just look at things on YouTube, read things.
Mhm.
And I don't care how you get your education, as long as you take some time to understand what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You have some idea. Don't listen to all those people who tell you the horror stories, because that's not the usual. And it's interpretation too. Everybody
Yeah.
interprets the birth
Yeah. It
experience
gets in your head.
differently.
Yeah.
I've had ladies where I thought, oh my gosh, that was a horrible birth experience. That was so traumatic. And I don't say anything. And then they come back for their 6 weeks and they're like, oh my God, it was wonderful. And I'm so grateful. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah,
our
so
interpretation.
that's one of my purpose of this podcast. I want to spread more of birthing experience, either vaginal delivery or C-section. We can
Right.
still talk about we're afraid or scared, but without drama,
Right.
because that puts fear into, other moms. Like your birth, you choose to have a vacuum with the first baby. You was pushing for 3 hours. I can tolerate pain. I admit it. I can tolerate pain,
Yep.
but that was all your choice. That was that you knowing your limit. You said that
Mhm.
earlier. And
Right.
with
That was
no,
just my experience of
yeah,
pain, and
yeah.
I know me.
Amy talked about it in one of the episodes that when, she recently have a baby, I think her baby is now like 17 months old. And she
Mhm.
said when she shared that she was pregnant, and some of moms just immediately goes to, oh my gosh, my birth was just terrible. And they just like start
Yep.
telling her about this horrific like birthing experience. And I'm not denying their birthing experience, but like she said it in podcast, like what is your intention of telling me that story? What is your intention, right? So we really need to like kind of pause
Right.
and think about it one more time before you just share your birthing story as just this horror movie.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
part of the reason why I felt the need to use the tool of the epidural is because I could not keep control.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
I felt, but it wasn't productive. It's
Mhm.
one thing to lose control and be productive, but
Right.
I wasn't productive.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
for me, it was more detrimental to just be going down that
Hmm.
horrible that I
Yeah.
was going down. And I'm like,
Yeah.
nope,
Yeah.
stop here. I
Hmm.
need help.
Right.
And and I got it. And it
Mhm.
was perfect. It was exactly what I needed. The other thing that's really interesting that as a pregnant woman, I didn't think much about until later in my life, but I was almost 40 years old with my second child. My husband and I, we kind of got our careers together. Then we had delayed having kids. We just felt like we'll do it later. We want to travel, we want to do things, we want to have fun, we want to finish our degrees. So we did all that before we had kids. And then we were very ready when our kids came. And the interesting thing was I would hear things like, "Oh my God, you're so old having your kids." Like, what am I gonna like fall over tomorrow or something? I mean, I was 40 years old for God's sake.
Yeah.
And
You're still a
I feel
woman.
like sometimes we as women are like targeted as being old. I mean, I know there's research that supports the fact that, as you age, you have a higher risk for medical conditions. I get it. But it doesn't mean that we should criticize women for being
Yeah.
40 or older for having children. Personally, for me, I was emotionally in a better place than
Mhm.
I ever would have been at age 20.
Right.
Um, you
Yeah.
know, I that would not have been a good scene for my kids. And even my husband and I even separated when our kids were like 9 and 3,
Hmm.
um, for a period of 3 years. And we had both tremendous emotional growth over that time and actually got back together. We never divorced, we just separated. And we both kind of learned things very spiritual in our own ways. During that period of time that I think actually added great value to our relationship and to our family,
Hmm.
um, being able to grow as a family.
Hmm.
So, there's always value in experiences, and birth is just the beginning.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's
I
the other
can,
thing I try and tell mamas is that it's one day when you give birth, but you've got the next 18 to 20 years of their lives to help them understand who they are,
Mhm.
you know, or less. But you know, some kids move out sooner, but
Yeah. I feel like it's a lot in our head, you know, like you said earlier, you tell your patients who had a C-section before, but then they come to you guys and say, I want to have a vaginal delivery, but they were told, oh, your pelvis is disproportionate for delivery. But then when you examine them, oh no, I feel like you have good pelvis. And that's what was in their head. I really
yes.
feel like when someone is reassuring them, no, you have a good pelvis,
Mhm.
and that's shifting them inside, like mentally.
It's planting a good seed.
Yeah, yes, yes. So that's
Good
kind
stuff.
of goes together about aging, you know, woman aging, because it's
Yes,
just our social defining, like, oh, you're too old to give birth to baby. But
right.
who to say that, you know? Like
Yeah.
again, woman's been giving birth for thousands of years. You don't think woman's, you know, before birth control, woman was giving birth until they go into menopause. I'm pretty sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, to me, we cannot just separate birth from our life, right?
Yes.
Like everything is not just birth, but when women are more, you know, aged, experienced, you have more life experience, meaning that you might have more coping skills.
Hmm.
Yeah, coping skills to, you know, going through birth. Yeah.
Yes. Good. More tools in your toolbox to be able to be
Yes.
successful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, being older and being pregnant is not always, you know, bad thing.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's me. Yeah.
Yep.
So, is there anything you want to share more about?
I think probably just the most important thing to me, being a provider for women is just to help them to be able to understand that they can do anything. And having positive birth experiences does help. It's been shown in the literature that it does help women to be able to be positive role models out in the world, starting their own businesses, being more entrepreneurial, being able to raise their families and raising healthy children, healthy minded children. So I think it's really important as communities that we're supportive of everyone, no matter what their needs are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that probably is my goal more than anything. It's just being supportive, being able to give women what women need
Mm-hmm.
to be able to raise supportive communities.
Right. Yeah. So we can make this birthing experience to empower yourself, oneself as a mom, as a woman, and we can be there as a providers, you know, give them, you know, everything for them to have empowered experience.
So they can take that out into their world.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Great episode, because you didn't just share, you know, being mom and giving birth, but you share a lot of perspective from, you know, providers perspective as a midwife. So thank you so much today.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.